I am here with Nick Perna. Nick, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, John, thank you so much for having me. A pleasure. I've loved your show for many years.
Oh, thank you. I've listened to your podcast as well. Fantastic work.
Yeah, very exciting.
Fantastic.
Very exciting.
So the reason I wanted to have you on is there was an interesting New York Times article about a singer. I'm going to do my best here. Anita Rakvelishvili. And
amazing.
I practiced that. And she had a child a couple of years ago, world-class singer, and has
world-class singer.
World-class. One of the great dramatic soprano, right?
Mezzo.
And she, since having her child a couple of years ago, is been struggling with her voice. And one of the things that she's had to deal with is this idea that it's somehow her fault, this idea of technique shaming. And as been pointed out, in the sports world, when someone gets injured, right, and not even a contact sport, if a golfer experiences an injury like Tiger Woods from repetitive motion, it's almost celebrated as they go into their treatment and their recovery and their comeback. But that doesn't happen as much in the singing world.
Aaron Rodgers with his Achilles tendon this season.
Absolutely.
This very NFL season.
Yeah.
No, it's really sad because I think that so often most people that you know who are elite level singers, myself included, you will deal with a voice issue at some point. And for so long, we've had a culture that has even been willing to accept that it wasn't just technique. But there are so many things that could happen to the singing voice that have nothing to do with the singer, their technique, their teacher, that are totally unrelated to any of that. I mean, from things like random things of a cyst on a vocal fold to nerve problems to a host of other issues, in this case of the article, we're dealing with hormonal changes of the body and physical changes of the body after pregnancy. These are normal functional things of life. And we have got to realize as a culture that we all deal with this stuff, and God, God forbid anyone does have to deal with this, but most people do at some point.
Yeah, I mean, you had been open in social media about going through it yourself. I would have been diagnosed with an essential vocal tremor, which is, really changed the way that I've had to approach my voice and work my voice. And the thing that really scared me when I realized, okay, there's something wrong with my voice, is this stigma that, well, then you can't teach anymore. That teachers who are struggling with something in their voice somehow are less than.
I mean, my story is, a different thing than yours, but yeah, I went through a time in my life where I remember the day I was a up and coming, young artist, had done my apprentice summers with Santa Fe Opera and thought I was very fancy, and companies were interested in hearing me and management and this, that, and the other, and other more prestigious apprentice programs and blah, blah, blah. And I it was almost in a week, all of a sudden my voice just fell apart, fell to pieces practically. And there were, as all these things in a lot of the time, they're very complex. And at the time, one of the things that strikes me looking back in my life when I started to have problems, not one person in my life ever suggested I see an otolaryngologist. Not one. No teacher, no coach. Everyone believed that my technique had fallen apart, that I went from young, budding elite singer to idiot.
Yeah, that makes no sense to me.
That makes no sense. Now, looking back, I think, how stupid is that? And, my problems were very complicated. My dear friend Lori Sonnenberg, who's an SLP in Chicago, works with singers, fully believes that I had very complex muscle tension dysphonia. because I lost any ability to sing high, I lost any ability to sing in tune, and I lost any ability to sing with any kind of regular vibrato at all. Through a number of things built upon each other. Some were mental. I had gained a ton of weight. Some were physical, with things like acid reflux, etc. But yeah, and then going through my life, I was very fortunate at the time that I was able to move into academia and teaching, and once I got into teaching, I realized I kind of had a knack for teaching and was able to progress. But then, even I was in my first academic job at an R1 university, and I've been very open about this, and we had a dean change who was a singer who believed that their way of singing was the only way of singing, and they presumed that since they didn't like the way I sang and couldn't sing, that I was an idiot and could not teach, and made it their place in life to get rid of me at that university. And going through the depression and shame that I went through over that was intense. At the same time, from my perspective, my story has a silver lining in that I was kind of confronted with, needing to retool myself physically, mentally, spiritually, vocally. And it took about a decade, though, for me. From my mid to late 20s to my early 30s. And, this was something that I was able to progress through and move out of. Not all of these voice situations are that way. But, it was, what you had said earlier, it's just, that is really the thing. We are so quick for some reason with singing to blame people's technique as if, gosh, they just don't know what they're doing in passaggio, or they just don't know what they're doing with their support, or they don't know what they're doing with this or that. Well, I don't know where the scarcity mindset of that comes from, but there are so many factors that go into singing, as you very well know. Singing is such a complicated, fine motor task that there could be so many possibilities. And we need to forgive people and give them some grace and just see them as a human. Because here's the thing about it as a singer or singing teacher is that so often we view our sense of self through our voice. And that's a different conversation than we want to necessarily hit on today. But I think we need to say it because these things hurt the person, the autonomous individual. And I'm sure that, the woman we started talking about, her journey has been personally, she was admitting it's been a real personal challenge to navigate these waters. And God, I can't fathom trying to navigate what I went through at her level, singing at the Met and already having an international career. I can't fathom. And we've seen this with so many other singers. I mean, recently we had seen it, of course, with certain people jumping all over John Bon Jovi with that video that had circulated the internet. From my ears, from my non-professional otolaryngologist ears without a diagnosis, that sounded like some nerve things going on there. We don't know, but my gosh, the singers that I saw jumping down, like blaming technique, that's insane. I'm not saying that obviously something couldn't be going on technically with a voice, of course. I mean, there are reasons voice teachers exist, but it's complicated.
It is. I mean, look, you can hear a singer in a performance and they're doing fine and they crack on a note and you can go, okay, that vowel was just a little too wide. Like that's an obvious okay, and they're back on track. But even talking about John Bon Jovi, it's like, no, there's something else going on there, obviously.
Correct.
And
exactly.
Singing is getting into complexity. It's incredibly complex. I've been on this idea that you never sing the same note twice because every event
That's beautiful.
has its own randomness thrown into it. And it's so important, just your mental state, the state of your body, everything. And so when you get people like this dean that you had, deciding that they knew the way to teach singing and the way to sing, blows my mind, because we still don't fully understand how this instrument works. So I don't know how this person has the answer.
As soon as you think that you know the science of the singing voice,
forget it.
Because as soon as you learn more about it, you realize, wait, but I thought.
Yeah.
And then you just start realizing more. Oh, wait, but that model doesn't agree with this model.
That's right.
Wait a second. That is spot on.
Yeah.
But I love what you said right there. I love what you said about you never sing the same note twice. You're never the same person twice.
No.
Your
Never.
body has changed.
Yeah. Every instance. And your mindset has changed. And I remember, and I talked about this on the podcast, where I called it the vocal yips, right? And the yips is like golfers will experience this.
I'm a golfer too, so I understand the golf analogy as well.
Yeah. And once that gets into your head, because I was last season, I believe, the San Francisco 49ers, and their field goal kicker missed like missing extra points, and they're like, oh my gosh, he's got the yips, and they said it on air. And once, like, that can happen to singers, and then the bullying and the judgment, just the environment around singing, we need to help each other. And this judgment, I think, is just so wrong.
But you know what? I want to say one thing about it, though. I do think that culturally it's coming around a little bit. I think it's getting better, because I don't see as much of this from younger generations.
Agreed.
And I don't mean to be ageist, but I don't see as much coming of my collegiate age students. I see a much more or young artists with the opera. I see more collegiality amongst them, and more willingness to support each other in ways that I don't know existed when I was training, for example. So I mean, I think the thing, there's progression.
I agree. I mean, I'll be slightly ageist. I'm really excited in what I'm seeing in young singers and young teachers, and just the different disciplines and knowledge bases that they're bringing into it, their openness to learn other methods, they're not being stuck in dogma. Because when I came into it, man, it was all about the camps. And one camp was just in battle with other camps. Like, everyone else was wrong and circle the wagons. And I
remember that culture. Yes, I remember it well. Yes. I mean, and let's not kid ourselves. There's still some of it.
There is, and there are those who consider themselves the voice police, and they're just and what frustrates me is they're smart people, they're educated, but they're just looking to see who they can tear down.
The voice police.
Yeah, self-anointed. And social media.
Do I get a badge if I?
You could. You make your own. You deputize yourself. Crayon, construction paper, and a pin.
Oh, jeez.
You're deputized. But as it's gone more global and we communicate with each other on a regular basis, so much of the positive is this sharing of information, but then there just is that negative side of those who want to tear down. Yeah. And for me personally, and I know better, but when I started dealing with my vocal struggles, and every singer knows before anyone else that they're dealing with something. Yep. It's not like John Bon Jovi has no idea. I mean, he's he's trying. He's
We're
working.
talking about one of the great singers, too.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And that whole TikTok culture of just making fun of and tearing down singers.
Yeah.
But for me, that fear of the police coming for me was silly, but it was palpable. And it was only when I said, you know what, I just have to tell people I'm dealing with this. There's no way around it, because there are moments when my voice is going to show that tremor.
Yeah. It took me years to talk about it. Like, I was not partially because I was, still at going through a tenure process and, whatever, and this, that, and the other, and trying to build my career and whatever. And, but I will say that when I finally did, I will say that I do think that there is so much support, though, that has grown amongst voice teachers, speech language pathologists. That there is great support for those of us who have been through this. And I can't tell you the people who have reached out to me and been like, I need to tell somebody this, and I feel like I can tell you this, even as long as you would keep it between us. And I'm like, of course, but so I think the important message there is, if you're going through something and you're out there, you are not alone. And no. I just hope you can find somebody who you can confide in if you don't feel like you can, because this is, it's like I tell my students, it's almost like the state of having a mental health crisis. The state of having a mental health thing is the state of being normal and being human.
Exactly.
Having a voice issue is the state of being a singer who sings a lot.
Exactly.
I mean, that's it. And I listen, and I also want to say, it's why I give my responsibility chair talk to my teachers, that when they are on this side of the piano as the voice teacher and not the singer, they have to remember that the words they say to their students matter, that they treat the singer across the room from them as a human, that you never know what baggage they brought in, you never know what they're already thinking about their voice, particularly if it's a new student that you don't have a developed relationship with. My God. And I'm very I'm so thankful for like the professional singers who I work with and the young 18-year-olds that I work with. It's really a privilege that these humans trust us with their voices. As teachers, what a vulnerable thing to share with someone. What a really beautiful thing to share your voice with anyone. But, I when I'm training teachers, I'm always very keen to be like, look, this is a human across from you first, not a voice. So important.
Having performed as a singer and then also having performed as a musician playing drums for many years.
If I made a mistake on the drums. I didn't know we shared that.
Yeah,
early in my youth, I was a drummer. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, please.
Yeah, I played drums for a living in my younger days. And
wow.
If I'd make a mistake on the drums, and musicians on stage, we'll just kind of laugh at each other, right? That's how you want to make a musician laugh, make a mistake, right? They love busting each other. But there was never a sense of embarrassment. But as a singer, you go for a note, it cracks or you're flat. It's a different experience. That mistake is not the same. The voice is truly unique, and the way we identify with it. And you're right, teachers need to be so careful, but also singers need to know that there are people who can help them. There are people to reach out to. Don't do this alone.
Yes.
See an otolaryngologist.
Yes.
See a speech language pathologist. I've said many times, Carrie Obert, who's a
Lover.
Brilliant SLP and a voice teacher, helped me immensely.
Yeah, she's brilliant.
Yeah. And if you need to have people like that, because it's hard. It's harder at least in my experience, the voice is different from every other instrument.
Well, I will say one of the things that the gentleman who became my voice teacher in my rebuild, one of the things he said to me before our first lesson is now something I say to all my students before our first lessons, and I try to remind them of this regularly. He said to me, well, you got nothing to lose. I got nothing to lose. Let's go play.
Yeah.
And I just thought, my God, that's just, and nobody had ever said that to me going into a voice lesson. I kind of went into voice lessons thinking I got to get this thing right, and I got to do this thing right, and I got to figure out this, and I got to figure out, let's go play.
That's beautiful, because it removes, because sometimes we'll go into voice lessons and we want to show I'm a diligent student. I've got to sing as well in my lesson as I did in my practice. Maybe I was really great on this past Tuesday, and now it's my Friday lesson. It's like I'm not as good as I was on Tuesday. And so no, let's just play. We play music.
Yes. Yes.
We play music. I love that.
That is
Nicholas,
exactly right.
Where can people find out more about you?
My website is nicholasperna.com. Perna is Perna. And that's the easiest. That's the easiest and best. Please listen to the Vocal Fry podcast, VOCALFRI, wherever you listen to podcasts like this beautiful one. And those are the two best places to find me.
Great. Thank you so much. I so appreciate you joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me, John. This is great.